What if the home you buy could symbol more than shelter and provide you with clarity of purpose and direction in your decision making? We'll return to that question in just a moment. But first, let's consider the actual and perceived viability of owning a home in today's market and societal conditions. According to the Wall Street Journal, only 10% of Americans truly believe that home ownership is truly attainable. However, despite the costs and challenges of realizing that dream, 89% of Americans still hold home ownership as a sign of merit and something they want to achieve to define their future. Here's a thought. What if home ownership conversations were more than about mortgages, square feet, and market conditions? What if the right home could become a symbol of greater clarity, purpose, and sense of meaning in every area of your life? This week I'm joined by my friend Kim Costa. She is a top 5% realtor with Atlanta Fine Homes, Sotheby's International, Realty, and the creator of the Wheelhouse Method. After spending more than 27 years in residential design and construction, and navigating her own journey of personal transformation, she discovered where we live often has a profound impact on how we live. Through her innovative framework, Kim helps people evaluate their homes, habits, and choices across 8 different dimensions of life alignment. Her philosophy is simple yet powerful. Your perfect home lies in the intersection of evaluating your living environment and maximizing your personal potential. During our conversation, Kim shares why home ownership should be viewed more than just a financial transaction. We discuss how our homes influence things such as our relationships, routines, well-being, our goals, and sense of identity. She also explains how buyers and sellers can avoid costly mistakes by looking beyond aesthetics and focusing on alignment between their values and aspirations. And she joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. My friend, I will welcome you to the program, and
Let's do it.
Super excited to learn how you're making a difference in the world through real estate, my friend. It's great to see you, and happy Monday to
you. It's very good. Yeah, I'm ready whenever you are, and I'm going to let you lead the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Kim, as a real estate agent and someone who's spent more than 20 years in real estate construction and real estate development, I wanted to start our conversation by asking you about home affordability and your stance on how we can make homes more affordable for a wider group of people? And just your overall thoughts on home affordability and the state of that in America today. What are your thoughts, my friend?
Well, it's becoming less and less affordable, for many reasons. Um, the average wage has gone down, per year. I think the average age of the first time home buyer has gone up to 40 years old, used to be in the mid to early 30s. And so people are having to wait a little bit longer to get into their first home. I have been seeing some multi-generational trends starting to form, which makes, well, it solves several problems, really. One is it helps the younger person afford a home because they're living with perhaps an older relative. And so the older relative can watch the kids, and that helps with daycare. And people are starting to pool their resources. So hopefully, we're going to overcome this trend of less affordability here.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tim, I know that you have spent more than 3 decades, as I said, in residential construction and design, and you're currently a top five top 5% realtor in your market, my friend, for the company you work for. So I'm curious to ask you, and I know that you are someone who believes where we live dictates how we live. And I know you have a whole method that you help buyers and your clients work through when we're talking about the way we're supposed to live and the way we view our home. So tell me all about your method and why it's so important to you, my friend.
Absolutely, I'm happy to. So it's the wheelhouse method, and it goes beyond just how much money do you have, and what city do you want to live in, and how many bedrooms do you need. So it goes into a deeper set of questions in 8 areas of the wheel of life, and those areas are finance, which is important always, health, environment, career, romance, fun and leisure, spirituality, and family and friends. So there are a series of questions that we go around the wheel of life and ask not only the obvious questions, but say you're moving because your job changed to a different city. Well, that's an obvious career move. But let's go around the other, say, 7 areas and see what else would be the home that is best for your next stage of life.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kim, I know you are someone who believes very strongly in alignment and really leveraging your home and where you live to establish a sense of alignment, my friend. And I know you focus on this topic through podcasts, through writing, through speeches as well. So talk to me about home ownership's relationship to alignment, my friend, and what you want people to know about that.
Well, I the first step in my whole method, besides those 8 areas, underneath that, the first step of the 4 M's, like the foundation of a house, is myself. So, who are you? What's your personality? What gifts have you been given? Are you using them? What's your mission in life? And who do you surround yourself with? So, that is the first stage. It's aligning yourself and your lifestyle with who you are. And not just your last stage of life or what everybody else is doing, but what you were meant to do and how you like to live. And so alignment is the first step in the wheelhouse assessment, making sure that you're aligned with your next stage of life.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kim, I want your opinion on this because our friends at the National Association of Home Builders say that 1 in 4 Americans say that home ownership is completely out of reach, my friend, while 75% of households are functioning by, by purchasing medium home price by leveraging their finances. So, what do you have to say about making the way we build homes more affordable so people that want to build their own homes can make
Mhm.
it affordable, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
Well, Part is finance is a huge topic when it comes to buying homes. There are first time home buying incentives where they don't need, many of our young people, especially, or even our older people, are stretched to make their monthly budget work. And so there are some incentives for people for their to especially to buy their first home that have 5% or less down. And so it's not like people have to wait years to save up that 20% down payment anymore. They can research going to get a home with one of those 5 to like 2% down payment. And that way they don't have to wait as long. And a portion of their income now doesn't go to rent that gets, thrown away for all intents and purposes. It's going into the equity of the home. And so that's one incentive. But other affordability measures are, when I graduated college, I graduated and was in my first home within like a year and a half at like 24 years old, right? Now, these days, the young people are living together and getting a roommate. They're some of the folks are borrowing or have help with a down payment from their parents or a family member. Some of them are, like I said, living with an older or other family member, and they pool resources to pay that mortgage. So it's not necessarily just partners who are living, it's brother and sister, it's grandmother and grandson, it's mom and daughter. I'm moving a mom and a daughter right now. And many people are just, starting to live with family until something happens and they can then have enough money to go out on their own. So, affordability, if you can't afford to move right now, you still deserve to live in your wheelhouse. Even if you can't afford your own home, you need to align where you're living with who you are and make small changes to just have peace and comfort and joy in your own home. So the wheelhouse method is not only for people who own their homes, it's for people who rent or, lease or whatever else they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know your journey to home ownership, you've spoken openly about how your journey at times made you feel stuck in your own home, your own home buying experience sort of shaped your mission today, my friend. Can you take me back to that season of your life and explain how you felt trapped and how you got out of this whole feeling of your own sense of lost identity as you were going through your own home buying process? Tell me more, my friend.
Absolutely. So, it doesn't matter how beautiful your home is. And that's, again, the point of the wheelhouse method. It's not about aesthetics. It's not about the color of your countertop or your paint color or even your curb appeal, although that does play into decisions. It's more about, can you function in your home? Does your home make your life easier, the way that you want to live easier? Or does it make it harder? Is it sabotaging you in some way? Is it too far from work? Does it not have enough bedrooms? Is there no space for you to get outside and even plant a container garden? Or are there stairs that you need to get up and down, but that's not really a possibility for you physically? That's a physiological need. So the way that this method works is it's built upon Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is in a pyramid. And the bottom need is physiological. Can you physically function in the home? Are you threatened by anything in the home, whether it be mold, bad water? Are there fires, that, or earthquakes or hurricanes or whatever that threaten your physical safety? And do you have enough, can you sleep at night or is it too noisy? That's physiological. Safety is, again, stairs. Can you get up and down the stairs or might you fall? Is there enough room in the kitchen for you to cook a meal? Are the appliances safe? Is there a gas leak? Things like that. And then one step above that is belonging and love. Do you feel like you belong in your community? Do you have spaces in your home that you can bring friends or family in and feel belonging and love or not? one more is esteem. We're on the fourth level now going up. Esteem is, are you proud of your home? Do you feel like it reflects your personality? Are there things on the wall or pieces from your travels or that are important to you? Does it bring you joy? Cognitive is, can you learn in your home or your community? Is there space for you to try a new hobby? And then the last one is aesthetic. So many people focus on aesthetic, which is at the top of the pyramid. There are all these other needs below it that it's not about the paint color or the countertops or how pretty it is. It's about, do you feel like you belong in the neighborhood? Are you safe when you walk down the street? Is there, can you sleep at night in your bedroom?
Yeah, absolutely. And, Kim, I'm also curious to get your thoughts on this. As you know, Kim, I have cerebral palsy, and, working to gain access from an inclusion standpoint when it comes to home ownership for folks with disabilities is something I'm passionate about. One of the reasons I serve on the board of directors for Habitat for Humanity in my hometown. So I'm curious to ask you about how we can unlock access for folks with disabilities so that they can better access sort of an avenue to home ownership. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Well, I think there can't be enough initiatives. There are already enough barriers for people with, issues with accessibility and things like that. And so I think, I think the lowest form of support is offering, options for people that are going into a condo or housing that are handicapped accessible. And sometimes builders don't think of those things, right? So then folks have to go back in and retrofit to make the home work for them, and that's an additional expense. To me, I do a lot of new home build situations. There should be, and I'm looking at like a 55 plus community right now, which definitely there needs to be no steps and there needs to be wide entries to every door and there needs to be accessibility to the shower and reachable things in the kitchen and all of that. It's not a standard option though, and I think it should be a standard option. And it might be an upgrade, maybe it's a little bit more, but I think when you go to choose a home in a condo or a standalone home, a single family home, or wherever it is that you might be living for a new build, there should be options available for a very, for hopefully not for any additional cost, because it doesn't cost any more to not have a threshold on a shower. You just pull the lip down. It just needs to be thought of more often than it is. Yeah.
Uh, I live my life through a saying that we make time for the stuff that we prioritize, and we just have to prioritize it more, right?
Exactly. We do. We have to prioritize it more. I'm about to remodel my bathroom. My husband has Parkinson's. I don't know if that's no secret or anything, but we need to consider grab bars and things like that. And so it's a whole. It can still be beautiful. The choices still need to be beautiful, but maybe we don't have a lip on the shower. Maybe we have doors that are easier to open as we age, and myself included. I got thrown off a horse at a beautiful home a long time ago, and I should not be walking. So it stays very present in my mind to, right now, I know my home has no steps going into it. And I think that's important that there are these types of options to come straight in. If I were in a wheelchair, I would need options like that. I love to cook. I don't want my life to be limited because there aren't options for what I love to do. And so I think that it should be more prevalent in our choices, especially for those who have physical limitations, that they can live a full and comfortable life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if you saw this, but the Washington Post, they did a study earlier this year that said that two-thirds of American renters believe that home ownership is out of reach for them in America today. So I'm wondering your thoughts on that study about how we can create more avenues to home ownership for renters, and how much do you think, the cost of living and inflation and
Mm.
the whole affordability detracts renters from even thinking about owning or buying their own home? My friend, what are your thoughts there?
Well, it is a real problem. It's a real problem. And there, in my opinion, there are going to need to be some incentives for those folks who feel that, the American dream, quote unquote, is out of reach. 2/3 of renters. That's a lot of people. That's millions and millions of people who feel as though the American dream of owning a home is unreachable. I have seen some initiatives, the stepping stone into, the stepping stone into having a single family home, if that's somebody's choice, is perhaps a condo, a smaller high rise unit where some of the expenses are shared with the other people. And so, I've seen some initiatives here in Atlanta that they're taking old, working buildings and factories and things like that and turning them into something that people can buy, build up their equity, so then the American dream is a little more affordable. So it's not going to be a huge, cute 3-bedroom cottage, but even a 1-bedroom apartment that is nicely appointed and is safe and accessible to everybody is better than throwing your money away every month. And then maybe that's the stepping stone for 8 to 10 years until they can make the next step. But at least they're not throwing 100% of their rent away every month. And I feel as though there should be more government assistance programs that help people who are working hard but feel stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about your method of helping people, the wheel method earlier, and I want to go back to that in terms of aligning the sense of identity with purpose in your own home. People often associate buying or owning a home with status in life, but I also think that creating an identity, uh, only part of that is owning a home, and making a house your own home is your own individual journey, as I'm sure you know. So I'm curious, when you talk about identity alignment and home ownership, how do you think those things are interconnected? And how do you think we can modernize the way we look at our own identity and purpose? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Well, identity is all about having the freedom to be yourself. And, you know, I'm going to go one step further. In my book, there is a level below the foundation. It's like what I call barriers to self. And sometimes I don't think we do as good enough a job helping folks who have sort of lost themselves along the way, or they've had a trauma, an illness, you know, an addiction. So the proceeds from my book go to people who are in recovery, and housing is provided to them for a set number of time or number of years or months. When they also receive training, they receive accountability. They have to go to meetings, and so that helps them find themselves again, right? And so if you identity and housing goes hand in hand, because if you've ever known anyone who has lost their home due to an illness, a traumatic experience, an addiction, they have lost themselves along the way while losing their house. And sometimes the first step to recovering themselves, whether it be through PTSD or addiction, or even just a regular old illness of some sort that has been expensive, and they've lost their home to pay for medical expenses. The start of recovering from that is having a stable home, Because how can you be yourself when you're stuck down in safety and physiological needs? If you don't have a home and you don't feel safe, how can you even be yourself? You're too worried about just surviving. And so a home to me is the foundation of being yourself. Until you have that stability, then you can get up to belonging and love and esteem, because those things, the way Maslow's hierarchy works, you really can't focus on the next level until the bottom level is solved. And so if there is someone is renting and they're behind on their rent, how can they go interview for a job? You know, how can someone who's homeless, or not homeless, but just in between or doesn't have a stable address, how do they go interview? What address do they put down? Right.
Hmm.
And so it really keeps them stuck. So to me, housing is a stepping stone to being yourself. And then once you get to a certain point, it becomes an expression of yourself. It becomes a stable environment to be yourself. And it supports you on your journey in your next stage of life.
Yeah, and Kim, just because I'm personally curious, I mentioned that I serve on the board of directors for Habitat here in Canada in my hometown of Windsor, but last year I traveled to York County, South Carolina, and we had something called a Common Ground Dinner with all of the Habitat affiliates across America and Canada. And one of the things that came up was in the States, a lot of Habitat's funding, up to 40% of it, is controlled by the government. So there are initiatives to help bring down the cost of housing in America, but they are certainly controlled by government more than they are here in Canada. So I'm curious, what role do you think the government has to play in homeowner affordability, and how can new construction realtors like you also play a hand in that discussion? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Well, I think it's bringing to light these statistics that you mentioned. You know, that so many people feel that the goal of homeownership is unreachable, and it's becoming a bigger and bigger problem. So at some point, and I think that point is now, our government is going to have to step in to solve the problem of, you know, of home ownership being such an unreachable goal for so many. And so there could be incentives, there can be alternate housing alternatives, that maybe the homes are smaller to begin with, but they still own that piece of property. And so maybe it's not a 3-bedroom house on half an acre. It's more of, just getting their foot in the door somehow to say, I own this space. I am putting money from my mortgage payment is going back into my own pocket every time I pay a monthly fee for this place that I live in. And I think that provides people with hope. But I am not a hugely political person. I'm a people person. I want people to do well, and I don't want people to struggle. And that's very heavy on my heart. So I don't have the political answer as to what government should do. I have a human being answer in that people are struggling. And we, as communities, that, like for yourself, you're part of Habitat for Humanity, which is amazing. We need to step in the private sector and volunteer, contribute, and help people so that, others in our country and throughout the world have a stable place to live. It's a basic human right.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kim, what is your definition or sort of philosophy on the new definition of home? And what I mean by that is, for any homeowners considering a move, or people wanting to reinvent their lives, or agents who want a deeper connection with their clients. And I know that your philosophy, as we've talked about challenges the traditional thinking when it comes to housing, my friend. So, in your view, how can we redefine what it really means to have a home in our societal context of today's sort of what is accepted around home ownership. So how do you think we can redefine the whole notion of owning a home and what it means to have a place to make it into your own personal space, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
Well, really, it is in those 8 areas of finance, health, environment, career, romance, fun and leisure, spirituality, and family and friends. Do have you maximized how you want to live in each of those areas? For example, do you like to have your siblings over or your children or whatever it might be? Do you have space to entertain? Are there things in your neighborhood or in your home that you like to do for fun and leisure? Is the environment to your liking? I know you have, it's a hot day there in Canada where you live, but, you know, is as you age in that environment, is it still going to be viable for you to, experience the cold weather? Some people have arthritis. Some people get ill. Some people can't live in Florida because the sun and the humidity is too much on their health. So it all interplays with, does your home support your all of those 8 areas? And nothing's going to be perfect, but do you recognize where there's a deficit and then you can do some things in your home to change that to be more of your home, not just a home?
And Tim, I have to tell you, I am a big HGTV guy. I love watching House Hunters and all the renovation shows. And anybody who watches those thinks that they can be the next great inventor in remodeling their home. But for anyone who wants to go through that process, I know it's important to you and for any of your clients to go through that, to do the appropriate research, to hire the right people to do the work. So I'm curious, what are some of the questions people should ask themselves before, during, and after they want to renovate their house? Because it's a whole process and it's important to be prepared, isn't it?
Absolutely. And my book is called Live in Your Wheelhouse, but the subtitle is An Empowering Guide to Stay, Go, or Reno. So short for renovate. And so I do think a lot about renovations and in that what so it start when you're going to renovate, it starts with a pain point. Are you frustrated because you and another person can't cook together in the kitchen? Is it too far from your job? Do you have to drive a long way? Does it not have a space for you to work? So, what is the pain point for the reason you're wanting to renovate? Do you need more space? Do you need more light? Is something unsafe or old or moldy or leaking? So, first, it is identifying what the pain point is. Why am I trying to fix this issue? And so, knowing that, what would solve the issue? I need an extra bedroom. I need an extra bathroom. We need to move closer to my job or to the airport because the city's getting bigger, and I'm in the car 2.5 hours a day, etc. And I think that's the biggest thing is the renovation isn't, again, about aesthetics, although that is the highest level need that we're fulfilling. You want it to be nice. However, there is a function that's not working in the current home the way that it is. So what are you trying to fix? And what would fix that? How much space do you need? What kind of storage do you need? What function is the room going to fill? How are you changing the function of a room? And then you can get to the aesthetics as far as like what colors, what materials, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And, on the other side of that spectrum, for people that are looking to downsize, say that they've raised their kids and they live in a 5 bedroom house and they don't need all the space anymore, but they don't want to be detached from their things. You know, when you live in a place for 30 or 40 years and want to downside after you raise your kids, it can be a interesting and emotional transition to the next phase of life. So I'm curious about your perspective on the emotional side of moving forward through real estate, whether you want to sell a place that you've been in for 30 years and downsize, or if you want to leverage the equity that you've made in your home. So I'm curious to ask you about, how we can use real estate to set up the next chapter of our lives if we're an older couple, for example, looking to retire, for example. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Well, so really, that is to coin my own phrase. That's very much in my wheelhouse because I'm I'm 60. My husband is just retiring this year, and so we're thinking about financial things. And we're in we're not in a huge home. We used to each live. We're remarried to each other, and we used to each live in quite large homes. And we decided we don't want that. We want enough space to do our thing. We don't want to have a mortgage. That's a big financial reason to not upsize and not do anything else. And so as people age and they start to retire, it becomes, what do you need financially? Also, how is your health? Can you maintain the home? Are you still able to go up and down stairs? Excuse me, etc. And truly, you have to think about, how much longer do I think I'm going to live? Am I retiring at 65 and I'm in great health? I think I might live another, let's be generous and say 95. Let's call it 30 more years. You certainly don't want to run out of money. So you have, 30 years left of retirement with potentially no income. That's something to think about. Do you have a large home that you could pull, some equity out of, or not even a large home, but could you pull some equity out of your home to live part of that? And so the home becomes a financial vehicle at this point, driving, how much equity you can pull out for the rest of your life in that, and also how much you can reduce your expenses.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kim, I know that you've turned your method into a book, as you've mentioned, and you've also turned it into a podcast, my friend. And I know that podcasting is also one of your passions. So tell me about your podcast and why it fits into your method, my friend.
Absolutely. So I love being a guest on podcasts, and I love doing my own podcast. I'll start having guests soon. But I feel so there's the book, and then there's the personal clients that I help here in Atlanta, which I love to do. But say that's 15 or 20 people a year. I feel like the message, live in your wheelhouse, and the wheelhouse method could get out to as many people as possible. And so you could buy the book, you could listen to the book, you could do a workshop with me, you could listen to the podcast, you could work with me personally. So they're all vehicles to get the word out about your home isn't always just about aesthetics. It's also about, how do you want to live, and most importantly, who are you? And are you living in alignment with who you're supposed to be and how you like to live? So it's deeper. There's a lot of dissatisfaction with people who have recently purchased homes. In 23 and 24, something like 82% of everyone who bought a home had a major regret. That's a lot of buyer's remorse.
To that point, I'm curious to end on a two-part question, Kim, and I wanted to ask you about the whole notion of the future of home ownership in America. How do you define that, my friend? How do you think it's going to evolve? And then lastly, I'm curious to ask you about your own life and legacy, my friend, and how you want that to be defined.
Oh, wonderful. So, I think that we are going to, if the government doesn't find solutions, and I'm talking about the US government because that's what I'm most familiar with. If we don't find solutions here in the United States to help people find more affordable housing, so that's either assistance in a mortgage, or offering different living situations that aren't as expensive, right? I believe the private sector are going to have to figure out ways to overcome these issues. And right now, I am seeing that as multi-generational living and also buying a smaller first home that is not necessarily a single family unit, but it's a smaller condo or duplex or something like that, and moving further out from the city, perhaps, because now that we can work remotely, many of us, the affordable housing isn't necessarily in the city where the job and the headquarters is. People are telecommuting to work. So the private sector is trying to find solutions, but I think more are needed. And the second part of the question, what is my legacy, is, I mean, I just turned 60. And so I am hoping that for the next 30 years, I will be able to talk more about live in your wheelhouse, give money to charities that help people recover from trauma and illness who don't have a home, because that's the stepping stone to becoming your full self again, who you were made to be. And I would like to help folks who don't have someone to give them a leg up, and who have sometimes by no fault of their own run into hard times. And my heart goes out to them. So I would like to continue to do that. And then I'd love to help people traverse life change, whether it's going from from parent to empty nester, from a healthy person to falling into illness, from graduating school to your first job, getting married, having kids. How do you move from one home to the next, or create a home from in the one you've got for that change of life, and to not stay stuck in a home that doesn't suit where you want to be?
Well, I have to tell you, you look fabulous for just turning 60, by the way. I wouldn't.
There may be a filter on here, so I'm full disclosure. I don't know.
Oh, no, you still look fabulous, my
Thank you.
friend. Celebrate life. It,
Yes, yes.
that,
Thank you so much.
absolutely. We've got we only have one life to live, so we might as well celebrate it, right?
Very true. Amen.
Absolutely, my friend. And finally, tell me, if people want to get connected with the Wheelhouse Method or yourself personally, what's the best way they can do that?
Really, the best way is go to my website, and that's lifestylefoundations with an S.com. And it has my book on there, some upcoming workshops, links to my podcast. And then you can sign up for the lifestyle lift assessment on the website, and you get on the mailing list, and then you get like a newsletter that tells you where I'm speaking, what the next podcast is, etc.
Well, fabulous, Kim. This was a great way to kick off my afternoon of conversations. I want to thank you for the good work that you're doing to
Thank you.
diversify real estate in Atlanta and all over America with the efforts that you're doing through speaking and everything in between, my friend. I think you are a fascinating person, and it was a real delight to have a few minutes to engage in conversation with you, my friend. I want to thank you for being here. It's most appreciated.
And thank you. I appreciate everything you're doing as well. Wonderful.